Good morning. Good morning. My name is Koten. I think many of you know me. Maybe some don't. My other name is David. Um, so I think we have a Tokudo that's coming up uh, in August, and it seems, I ordained as a priest a number of years ago, and whenever we have this Tokudo, it kind of reminds me. It's kind of like when we used to do, well, we still do when we do the lay ordination or the jukai. It's kind of like we're taking that jukai over and over again. The jukai is kind of the taking refuge or taking the vow. And the kokudo, the priest ordination, what comes up, and many people discuss or they ask, what is the meaning of this ordination, whether it's a deepening of our practice or one step up from Jukai, which is kind of makes it that kind of step ladder Zen, which is not kind of a Buddhist thing that we do. And I think about it myself too. I've never really given much much speech to exactly what it is to be a priest, or but maybe a lot of thought, not direct thought of what is this and what is that. But so I'm not really sure, but something came to me this morning. So the robe that we wear, this is the kuromo. It protects us from the elements. The robe that we wear over that, this is the okesa. It's the Buddha's robe or the Dharma field. And then also our bowing cloth. This is a zagu. And this kind of protects our kuromo or the robe and the okesa or the nyohoi from the ground. If we're sitting on the ground, it protects us from the dirt. And the thing that came to me today was they're all cut from the same cloth. And I think Roshi says, many times that we all have the same mother, that there's no separation, there's no difference. I don't think that I'll elaborate on that anymore. I would like to talk about the Genjo Koan today. But first, I want to tell you a story about a young boy who grew up in Ohio. I always liked science fiction, the thoughts of space, just like boys do. But it came to me one day, or maybe over many days, that thinking about the universe, that we, especially as young people, we think that there are these things that are closed systems. We might think that we ourselves are a closed system, which we might get into that a little bit later. But thinking about the universe and, wondering, boy, just with all of the stars and all of the things that are in the galaxies and everything that's in there, how big is it and where's the end? And to think about it as a closed system as we do, you might think of the universe as a box. But it came to me that, well, if it's a box, how thick are the walls of the box? What's the box sitting on? What's outside of the box? How could there possibly be just an end to the universe? And this still gets me to this day. Now today they can explain that. They can, and we say infinity, but infinity maybe an overused word, and it just doesn't strike us quite the way maybe that it did when I was a little kid. But yeah, they can show you the mathematical equation and tell you that that's it. But it's not the same. It's not our mind actually wrapping around that. And the same can be said going in the other direction with time. We say, time everlasting, or from the beginning of time. But what does that mean? Because if there was a beginning of time, it's just like that little kid who would ask their dad, well, if that was the beginning of time, what was before that? Then it stops. Your mind kind of stops at this point. This, I think, this is approaching, this this thought or this sentiment that Roshi had when he named his first book. There's no beginning and no end, because in our small worlds we have this closed systems. There has to be a beginning and there has to be an end, and yet how can there be a beginning and an end? Because there's got to be something before that. If you're watching a TV show and the series ends, and we wonder, what else happened? What happened after that? After they rode off into the sunset? So this is all very inspiring to me, anyway. Pondering the moon and the stars and the galaxies and what all might be out there. But it's not really our way in Buddhism. Our way in Buddhism is to find the same profundity in our bowl of cornflakes in the morning, because there's no difference. It's all the same. I mean, especially if there's infinity, the cornflakes are just as big as anything else in the universe, or just as small. They've been there forever. Cornflakes, or your shoes, or whatever it is, whatever that we're doing, we're cleaning the toilet. It's all one, because everything has the same mother, and everyone. Dogen Zenji is the picture at the back of the Zendo, one of the founders of the Soto tradition, our tradition of Zen, in which we could be called like silent illumination, or shikantaza, which just means sit. We sit zazen without anything in mind, with no gaining idea, not trying to become anything, not trying to get rid of anything. And that's just it. So Dogen's first training was in the Tendai tradition. Tendai tradition, one of their great tenets um, is that that everything, all living beings and all non-living beings, are endowed with the Buddha nature. So everything is Buddha. We look around, we say Buddha, 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 Buddha. There's nothing that's not Buddha. And so Dogen's question was, if this is so, then why do we have to practice so hard? Why do we have to do all of these things? If we already have it, why do we have to do it? This was his question throughout his life that took him to China. I mean, it took him to many different teachers and around until he finally found the answer to that question. And when he came back from China, one of the first things that he did was he wrote this Genjo Koan. Genjo Koan is it was kind of a letter that was written to a lay disciple, um, to explain things, maybe things as it is. So I would like to talk about Genjo Koan today. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about our practice here at Genjo-ji, which is actually named after the Genjo Koan. This temple is Genjo-ji, Sonoma Mountain Zen Center. And one of the practices that we have here is called soji. Soji just means temple cleaning. And we may have many different ideas of how we should be at the Zen center or at the Zen temple, or how we should hold ourselves, or how we should work, what we should do. Um, the instruction is just follow the schedule. So whatever the schedule says, that's what we do. And what this does, it kind of first seems like it's a little constricting, because maybe we're used to just doing whatever we want to do. We eat when we want to eat, we play when we want to play, and we work when we want to work. Well, unless we have a job that makes us be there on time. But the schedule is actually quite freeing, because then we don't have to worry about what we're going to do. We don't have to worry about what our personal agenda is for the day. We can just look at the schedule and follow it. And this is especially true when we have our intensive retreats or sesshin, because it's everything is mapped out from 4:30 in the morning until 9 o'clock at night. And there's time for personal time there too, a little bit, some breaks where we can sit in the sun, or we can take a little snooze, or brush our teeth, whatever we need to do. But this soji, it lasts a very short time, 20 minutes. And we're all given a job to do, or we actually kind of volunteer for a job. Or we're all working together on a job. It could be just cleaning the zendo. But this isn't a time for us to look around and deep clean things. It's really just going through very quickly and touching what we can. And then, when the Han starts to ring, that's the signal that soji is over. We put our things away and we go back. And so it's really, at first, it seems too quick to do the job that we're trying to do, because we have our own ways. We have our personal idea how we want to do that. We want to be very more thorough, or we think that we should be more thorough. We're Zen practitioners. We should really take care of the details. But soji isn't about taking care of the details. Soji is touching what we're supposed to touch for the amount of time that we're supposed to touch it, and then coming back together, and we go into the next thing. It's quite an interesting practice, and I've come to really love doing the soji, even though we have a short list in the morning. We do this every morning, and they're usually always the same things. So it's not, we're not also able to go and do something more interesting. Sometimes we can raise our hand for a different job, but they're all kind of the same job. The job is taking care of the temple, for the sole purpose of taking care of the temple, so that we can uphold, uphold the cleanliness. It's really not about cleaning it. It's about maybe cleaning ourselves and getting rid of what we want to do. So let's talk about silence for a minute. So whenever I do the Zazen instruction on Saturday mornings, we have a Zazen instruction, and sometimes we have many people that show up, and sometimes we have just a couple of people that show up. Sometimes no one shows up. Um, and to be honest, it used to be that, when I was on for the Zazen instruction, because we never knew when people were going to come or not, and I would wait by the window. And part of me would be hoping that nobody comes so that I could go and do what I wanted to do. But whenever they would come, it wouldn't be like, but it would just be that switch. And once I got into the instruction and talking, and it's not really instructing them, it's instructing myself as well. Because it brings back all of the points that I was instructed in when I first got here. I think it brings up, because we're looking at beginners, and so it brings up the beginner's mind in myself as well. It's an interaction, and it's very, very important in Zen to have that interaction. But the first thing that I usually talk about is silence. If we can try to explain what that is, or the meaning or the reason behind it, people are struck, especially in this day and age with our smartphones and tweeting and Facebooking and whatever else it is that we do on these. But this silence isn't just shutting our mouths. It's not just being quiet, and it's not about making ourselves calm, demure. There's this self that has this tape that seems to run constantly. And this tape is telling us about what our likes are, what our dislikes are, where we'd like to be, what we're going to have for lunch, what that person said to us, and what we're going to come back and say to them. The kids are acting up. I'm not going to get into what else is going on in the world, because there's plenty to have this brain just spinning. But this silence is, it's not really about just quieting that either, but it's about letting it go. Uchiyama Roshi had the term opening the hand of thought. So, and this just means letting go. So we're hanging on to our aversions and our attractions tightly, because this is our personal self. We need to let them go. And in Zazen, this is kind of our chance to do that, or to attempt it. This silence can be very frightening, perhaps at first, to try not to constantly tell yourself what you're going to be doing. To let go of that might be, it's very difficult sometimes, and especially when we first attempt it. But it's kind of to me, it's really the entrance into this practice, and the entrance into Zazen. Dogen says the Zazen that I speak of is not learning meditation. So we're not trying to learn how to be quiet or silent. We're not trying to learn how to be calm or deliberate. We're not trying to learn how to focus, although focus can be a very important part of it. But in our Soto tradition, we're just sitting. Many things might come up as soon as we sit down and think, okay, I'm going to be silent now. I'm going to meditate. Everything will come up. Sometimes it will, actually, and sometimes it won't. But we can't be concerned with that, because if we're trying to push it away, or we're trying to bring in the good, it's the same. It's still not just sitting. So when the things come up, when the thoughts come up, we just let them come up. And with an in breath, we accept them. And with our exhalation, we let it go. It's opening the hand. And so we just sit there and we breathe. It's actually the only thing that the universe needs from us is to breathe. That's our only benefit, is creating carbon dioxide from the oxygen for the plants. And the plants do this for us. If we think that we're a closed system, try to live without plants around breathing nothing but carbon dioxide. You're not going to last very long. Or to try to live without the water. It's constantly, I mean, like this morning with the fog, this thick fog, and the rains bringing fresh water to the plants and to us. We try to live without that. We say that we all have the same mother, but what is that mother? Who is that mother? So we'd like to talk about the Genjo Koan today. Genjo Koan, uh, Shohaku Okumura Roshi, um, disciple of Uchiyama Roshi, Koshu Uchiyama, who was a disciple of Kodo Sawaki. But Shohaku Okumura is a very renowned and accomplished translator, and he's translated so many of Dogen's works. And the one, this is called Realizing Genjo Koan. And he translates Genjo Koan as actualization of reality. That's pretty big. The actualization of reality. The unity of practice, realization, and true reality. Manifesting as the present moment. So the last part of this manifesting, this is the movement, this is the confluence of practice, realization, and true reality. So this, the Genjo Koan, as I said before, was written soon after Dogen came back from China. And it was written as his basic philosophy that one should approach every activity as bodhisattva practice. And I think, the more I read it, and I actually hadn't read the Genjo Koan for many, many years, not many, but a few years. When I first had the idea to come and practice here, I think I emailed the office, and I think I got an email back like within a couple of hours from Yose, and I was like, whoa, that was quick. We think we're ready for something, and then you want to jump in. But then he sent me like a care package. It was, I think it had a pamphlet from Sotoshu in it. It probably had a mountain wind in it. A couple of other things, some information on Genjoji, and then it had a copy of the Genjo Koan. And I was like, oh, what's this? And I read it, and it really struck me. The Genjo Koan, Dogen writes kind of very concisely in some ways, and very poetically in this Genjo Koan. Shohaku Okumura says, it's one of the first things that he wrote when he came back. It's quite short and it's beautiful, but at the same time, it could be very difficult to understand. But just to read it through and to let the imagery kind of hit you is it was really quite interesting for me, especially a couple of different lines that really stick to me to this day. Dogen really emphasized zazen, and he emphasized practice of zazen is the realization. So he calls it practice realization. So it's not, you can't split those up. So again, this is the motion or the confluence or the interaction of practice and realization, that they can't be separated. So it's not us sitting back and conceptualizing, thinking, oh yes, that's it. It's us acting in the moment and acting in it, doing the zazen, doing the soji, doing our work practice, chanting, meeting each other, everything. Practice realization. So I think first I wanted to go through just a couple of lines from Shohaku Okumura's book and make a couple of comments on those, and then I wanted to share the Genjo Koan with you. Uh, Sorry, I just got distracted by a highlight that I hadn't seen before. Okay, so as and I'll read through the Genjo Koan in just a bit, but I wanted to pick out a couple of excerpts that kind of show there's many different kind of facets to the Genjo Koan. He talks about reality from many different angles. But this is actually a poem from Mazu Daioyi that Dogen then comments on. And in this, he's talking about the moon as the self. And we all know that in Zen, we see the moon as enlightenment. But he's saying the moon is the self. The perfect circle of the mind moon is alone. Its light swallows 10,000 things. The light does not illuminate objects. Neither do objects exist. The light and the objects both cease to exist. What is this? And then Dogen, writing about this poem, the ancient Buddha said, one mind is all dharmas, and all dharmas are one mind. Therefore, the mind is all things. All things are one mind. Because the mind is the moon is the moon. Because all things that are the mind are without exception the moon, without exception the moon, the entire universe is the entire moon. The whole body is the whole moon. Within the before and after, 3 and 3, in the 10,000 years of a moment, which one is not the moon? The sun-faced Buddha and the moon-faced Buddha that are our body, mind, and environs are all within the moon, coming and going within the cycle of birth and death are both within the moon. The 10-direction world is up and down, the left and right of the moon. Present activities of our daily lives are the bright 100 grasses within the moon and the bright ancestral teacher's mind within the moon. And then Okumura will comment that the mind that Dogen speaks of when he says, one mind is all dharmas, is not the psychological mind. My teacher, Kosho Chiyama Roshi, called this mind the reality of our lives. That we are connected with all beings is the reality of our lives. We can also speak of this reality as the reality that exists before we separate it into self or subject and others, object. We separate reality into self and other with our discriminating thinking. Yet when we open the hand of thought and let go of discrimination, we become one with the network of interdependent origination and manifest our connection with everything. And Uchirama Roshi called this unity of self and all things original self. When Dogen's talking about self, it's big. It's not this guy. It's everything that we can't be separated from. So this is an excerpt from Genjo Koan, and this is a translation from Shako Okumura. It's a very good translation, very maybe more literal than the translation that we've used for many years here at Genjo-ji, and we'll get into that in a little while. But it does bring, it's interesting to see the difference between the two and try to understand it, because the translation, from what I understand, is a very difficult thing, because these words and the characters and the time that it was written all kind of need to be considered when we try to turn that into our barbarian language of English. I don't know why I say that. It's my favorite language. So this is Dogen. He's talking about the moon in the water, the reflection of the moon in the water. He says, the moon never becomes wet. The water is never disturbed. Although the moon is vast and great light, it is reflected in a drop of water. The whole moon and even the whole sky are reflected in a drop of dew on a blade of grass. Realization does not destroy the person, as the moon does not make a hole in the water. The person does not obstruct realization, as a drop of dew does not obstruct the moon in the sky. And this part really struck me. This is Okumura Roshi again. And he says, in this passage, the drop of water represents the self and the moon represents the 10,000 dharmas, all things, or the myriad things. As we read this, we should keep in mind that the self Dogen speaks of is a knot in the network of interdependent origination. There is no self that is without relationship to this network of the myriad things. And in fact, the self's relationship to the network is the self. So I want to read that one more time. So as we read this, we should keep in mind that the self Dogen speaks of is a knot in the network of interdependent origination. There is no self that is without relationship to this network of myriad things. And in fact, the self's relationship to the network is the self. So to me, this is that confluence. This is the motion. It's the relationship. It's how things interrelate. That is the self. It's not this guy. We talk about the middle way, and this philosophy came strongly from Nagarjuna. We talked about the middle way as we have the two realities of ultimate reality, which would be the absolute, and the relative reality, which is all of the things and us and everything. And what Nagarjuna said, that was that it's the relationship of these two. This is his philosophy, was to hold the relationship of these two in everything that we do. And this, I think, truly, it speaks to our Zazen practice, and not just to the Zazen practice, but to our lively practice. I said for years that we get off of the cushion, we go out into the world, that we should hold the spirit of Zazen, and it never really felt quite right to say it that way, because what does that mean? What's spirit? What's the spirit of Zazen? Perhaps it's holding these two realities at the same time, maybe not as equal, but having those two realities in everything that we do, and moving with whatever it is that we're doing right now. So as Zen Master Panshan said, the self swallows the myriad things, and the myriad things swallow the self. What is it that is swallowed by both the self and the myriad things? Dogen speaks of it by saying that the moon is reflected in each and every drop of water, no matter how small it is. We learn in Buddhism, in Zen, as I flip through the pages here, about the three treasures in Buddhism: the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. But we can't separate them. There's no Buddha without Dharma and Sangha. There's no Sangha without Buddha and Dharma. And it's not to say that one is above the other. They're all the same. The Buddha includes Dharma and the Sangha. And so the Dharma includes the Buddha and the Sangha. The Sangha includes the Buddha and the Dharma. They can't be separated. Just like we can't be separated from our surroundings, from our universe. I want to move on to one last passage here. And this is Dogen, as he's talking about the bird and the fish. The bird is life and the fish is life. And I guess I better back up just a second here. So this is Dogen. However, if a bird departs from the sky or a fish leaves the water, it immediately dies. We should know that for a fish, water is life, and for a bird, sky is life. A bird is life, a fish is life. Life is a bird, life is a fish. We should go beyond this. There is practice, enlightenment. Again, this is the way of living beings. Therefore, if there are fish that would swim or birds that would fly only after investigating the entire ocean or sky, they would find neither path nor place. When we make this very place our own, our practice becomes the actualization of reality. Genjo koan. When we make this path our own, our activity naturally becomes actualized reality. Genjo koan. This path, this place is neither big nor small, neither self nor others. It has not existed before this moment, nor has it come into existence now. Therefore, the reality of all things is thus. In the same way, when a person engages in practice enlightenment, in the Buddha way, as the person realizes one Dharma, the person permeates that Dharma. As the person encounters one practice, the person fully practices that practice. So I think with this bird or fish, this has always kind of struck me. It was the bird or the fish trying to reach the end of its element before it moves in the element. And this is just like us. Before we take one step, we want to know what the last step is. We want to have things planned out and organized and figured out. And I catch myself with this, it used to be if I needed to buy something, I would just go to the store and I would look at the shelf and I would take that one and buy it. But now I have to go and research first. So before I even go to the store, I go on Google and I say, well, what's the best backpacking tent that I can buy? And then you find this and you get everybody's information on what they think, and it just it stops us because I could have had the tent already, but I had to take weeks to research it. But I think this is so in many of our endeavors that we really want to know, if we take that job, what's it going to be like in 2 years? There's this great hesitation that it causes in us because we're not acting right here and right now. We're not just taking that first step. We're taking that first step with the onus of 10,000 steps that follow. Instead of being right in the moment, we're in the future, or we're in the past, trying to remember where it was that we walked before. I think I'd like to close just with the Genjo Kon. This won't take too long. And now this translation is by Tanahashi, Suzuki Roshi, and Aitken in 1965, and edited by Jaksho Kwong Roshi in 2004. And this is the same version that Yose mailed to me over on the East Coast many years ago. When all things are the Buddha Dharma, we have enlightenment and ignorance, studies, life and death, Buddhas and people. When all things are without self, we have no ignorance, no enlightenment, no Buddhas, no people, no life, and no death. The Buddha way is beyond being and non-being. Therefore, we have life and death, ignorance and enlightenment, people and Buddhas. However, flowers fall with their attachment and weeds grow with their detachment. That we move ourselves and understand all things is ignorance. That all things advance and understand themselves as enlightenment. It is Buddhas who understand ignorance. It is people who are ignorant of enlightenment. Further, there are those who are enlightened of enlightenment, and those who are ignorant of ignorance. When Buddhas are truly Buddhas, they are not necessarily aware of themselves as Buddhas, but they are enlightened ones, the advanced and enlightenment. When we see things and hear things with our whole body and mind, our understanding is not like a mirror with reflections, nor like water under the moon. If we understand one side, the other side is dark. To study the Buddha Dharma is to study ourselves. To study ourselves is to go beyond ourselves. To go beyond ourselves is to be enlightened by all things. To be enlightened by all things is to free our body and mind, and to free the bodies and minds of others. No trace of enlightenment remains, and this no trace continues endlessly. When first we seek the truth, we are far away from its environs. When we discover that the truth has already been correctly transmitted to us, we are ourselves at that moment. If we watch the shore from a boat, it seems that the shore is moving. But when we watch the boat directly, we know that it is the boat that moves. If we examine all things with a confused body and mind, we will suppose that our self is permanent. But if we practice closely and return to our present place, it will be clear that nothing at all is permanent. Firewood turns into ash, and it does not turn into firewood again. But do not suppose that the ash is after and the firewood before. We must understand that firewood is the stage of firewood, and there we find its before and after. And yet with its past, this past and future, its present is independent of them. Ash is at the state of ash, and there we find its before and after. Just as firewood does not become firewood again after it is ash, so man does not return to life after his death. Now it is specifically taught in the Buddha Dharma that life does not become death. For this reason, life is called no life. It is specifically taught in the Buddha Dharma that death does not become life. Therefore, death is called no death. Life is a period of itself. Death is a period of itself. They are like winter and spring. We do not call winter the future spring, nor spring the future summer. Gain we gain enlightenment like the moon reflecting in the water. The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. Although its light is wide and great, the moon is reflected even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the whole sky are reflected in a drop of dew in the grass. Enlightenment does not destroy the oneself, just as the moon does not break the water. One does not hinder the enlightenment, just as a drop of dew does not hinder the moon in the sky. The depth of the drop is the height of the moon. The period of reflection, long or short, will prove the vastness of the dewdrop and the vastness of the moonlit sky. When the truth does not fill our body and mind, we think that we have enough. When the truth fills our body and mind, we know that something is missing. For example, when we view the world from a boat on the ocean, it looks circular and nothing else. But the ocean is neither round nor square, and its features are infinite in variety. It is like a palace. It is like a jewel. It seems circular as far as our eyes can reach at the time. All things are so, though there are many features in the dusty life and in the pure life. We only understand what our study can reach. And in our study of all things, we must appreciate that although they may look round or square, the other features of oceans or mountains are infinite in variety, and universes lie in all quarters. It is so not only around ourselves, but also directly here, even in a drop of water. When a fish swims in the ocean, there is no end to the water, no matter how far it swims. When a bird flies in the sky, there is no end to the air, no matter how far it flies. However, the fish and the bird do not leave their elements. When the use is large, it is used largely. When the use is small, it is used in a small way. Thus, no creature ever comes short of its own completeness. Wherever it stands, it does not fail to cover the ground. Though it flies everywhere, if a bird leaves the air, it will die at once. Water makes life, and air makes life. The bird makes life, and the fish makes life. Life makes the bird, and life makes the fish. There are further analogies possible to illustrate in this way practice, enlightenment, mortality, and eternity. Now, if a bird or fish tries to reach the end of its element before moving in it, this bird or fish will not find its way or place. When we find our place at this moment, then practice follows, and this is the realization of truth. For the place and the way are neither large nor small, neither subject nor object. They have not existed from the beginning, and they are not in the process of realization. Thus, in our practice of the Buddha Dharma, when we gain one truth, we master that one truth. And if we encounter one activity, we complete that activity. Here is the place, and he leads the way. Therefore, understanding is not easy, because it is simultaneous with the complete attainment of the Buddha's teaching. Do not suppose that what we realize is knowledge in terms of concepts. Though we have already attained supreme enlightenment, we may not necessarily see it. Some may not. Priest Tutetsu of Mount Myoku was fanning himself. A monk approached and said, "Sir, the nature of the wind is permanent, and there is no place that it does not reach. Why then must you fan yourself?" "Although you understand the nature of the wind is permanent," the master replied, "you do not understand the meaning of its reaching everywhere." "What is the meaning?" asked the monk. The master just fanned himself, and the monk bowed with deep respect. This is an experience of proving the Buddha Dharma and its correct transmission. Those who say we should not use a fan because there is wind know neither permanency nor the nature of the wind. The nature of the wind is permanent. The wind of the Buddha Dharma actualized the gold of the earth and ripened the cheese of the long river. Thank you.